What is going on, everybody? My name is Dr. Fixit. Yes, I am a real doctor. I'm a chiropractor and I love to fix things. Today, I have something very special to show you. Today, we will begin on a journey on the restoration of my first project car. Here in a second, I'm going to uncover this car and you will see for the first time what an absolute piece of junk. I can't wait to get started on this project. Ever since I was in high school, I have dreamed of having my very own project car. I grew up watching and helping my grandfather work on really cool classic cars. And here it is. A 1977 MGB roadster. I found it on Facebook Marketplace and was able to buy it for just $100. Well, $100 plus an old trailer I wasn't using. But it was a bargain. And it's mine. The seller had to drop the car off at my house because it's non-running as well as non-starting. Not to mention it had a screwdriver in the ignition. The interior is okay and lacking quite a few major parts, but it came with a trunk full of parts, a new soft top, and an aftermarket carburetor, which we'll see in just a second. Under the hood, it's pretty bad, but not terrible. It's got a brand new master cylinder and doesn't have any noticeable oil leaks. The emission system as well as the charcoal canister are completely gone. But this is a classic car, and our county doesn't have any emissions restrictions. First, we need to get the engine to turn over. And for that, you need fuel. Yeah, I know, this is a really janky setup. But it didn't come with a gas tank, so this'll have to do for now. It was a little low on coolant, so I decided to put a little extra in there before I attempted to turn it over. This wasn't really necessary, but hey, it seemed like the easiest thing to do at first. Until I looked inside the coolant reservoir and found some floaters. Oof, we'll have to tackle this at another time. I charged the battery first to see if that was the issue, but it still wouldn't turn over. It just makes clicking noise. Sometimes if you tap on the starter a couple times, it'll break free and then finally turn over. This did not happen for me. I'm gonna have to remove the starter and get a closer look. First, you have to remove the oil filter. Next, the distributor, which is held in by 2 bolts. I put some tape on the shaft of the distributor so that I hopefully wouldn't lose the timing. There are 2 bolts that hold on the starter. The first one was easy, but the second one you had to crawl under the car to loosen up. Upon my first inspection, I didn't really know what was wrong with it, so I took it to AutoZone. They tested it and said everything was fine. I later found out that their machine was broken. This is the starting relay, and I thought, maybe I should replace this. So I did, but that didn't fix it either. Next, I took the opportunity to clean up the starter. There was quite a bit of old grease and road junk on it that I decided to scrape off with a scraper, and then wipe it down with the rag soaked in carburetor cleaner. This seemed to do the trick. some of the more stubborn gunk needed a wire brush to get it off. The end result looked pretty darn good. I found a guy in town who took a closer look at it and found out that it just needed a new solenoid. This set me back about $60. So the starter is working. Let me show you guys what it does. So that's a really good sign that we can get it turned over. I did get it running on ether, but the issue is definitely here at the carburetor. This, I don't know what is going on here. There's a spring attached here. That's the choke cable. The throttle cable's kind of sticky. It needs a lot of work. So I'm gonna go ahead and rebuild this carburetor, throw it back on, and see if we can get it started on gas. I looked inside the manifold and was not impressed by what I saw. This is the face of a man who is rethinking the entire project. My confidence was dwindling, but the show must go on. I have never rebuilt a carburetor. I have never taken apart a carburetor, so this was going to get interesting. I looked at some videos online, took some tips from those, and applied it to my own project. That is the inside of the carburetor, completely and utterly clogged up with God knows what kind of deposits. The screen filter is really telling. Yeah, that's not good. Here are all the parts laid out on the table before cleaning. To me, it was a lot. In fact, most of the footage of the carburetor rebuild was just too much to put in this one video, so I made another video detailing the full rebuild of the carburetor. You can find it in the description below. Here is the finished product. I was pretty darn proud of myself. Everything was cleaned and working properly. I didn't lose any parts, and I definitely improved the function of the carburetor. The secondary valve that you see there on the left wasn't even opening before I began the rebuild. Now, it's opening all the way. The rebuild kit itself only costed about $15, but it took me weeks to clean it up and make it look like this. It looks almost brand new. Here you can see the mechanics of the accelerator pump. Before, it wasn't even oriented correctly, but now it's working just fine. The intake manifold was the next thing to tackle. Because it's made of aluminum, it polishes up really nicely. Not shown was the 2 hours it took to clean out the inside of the intake itself. Wait a second, are those cheetah print paint? Next, we'll finally put on the intake manifold, followed by the carburetor. Every single bolt, nut, and stud had to be cleaned thoroughly. Here I am placing a gasket in between the intake manifold and the carburetor. This also came with the carburetor rebuild kit. Before starting the car, I'm gonna need to clear the lines. I definitely don't want any of that getting into the newly rebuilt carburetor. After doing some research on the Weber carburetor, I found out the fuel pump I had was putting too much pressure onto the carburetor. To fix this, I bought a fuel regulator kit along with a tiny filter. This whole setup here cost a little over $70 because of the extra brass fittings as well as the fuel pressure gauge. A cheaper option would have been for me to buy a new fuel pump that was rated for this carburetor, but I didn't know I could buy one at the time, so this'll have to do. The last hose to hook up is the engine breather hose. The last thing to do is put on a brand new air filter. The last one was certainly worse for wear. And finally, I'll let the last part of this video speak for itself. Okay, go ahead and we're going to turn it all the way now. Okay, I'm ready. Do it again. Okay, hold it there. Except she's smoking. But I think I know what it's from. I think it's just excess oil being burned off. And there you have it. We went from a non-running, non-starting, seemingly hopeless state and gave this little car another chance. I gotta be honest, there were many times when I wanted to quit in the beginning. I even had an uncle who was a mechanic tell me to sell the car and be rid of it as soon as possible. I think there would have been no shame in that decision. But in my line of work, if I give up on my patients when things got tough or weren't going as expected, they might give up and never experience what it's like to feel new again. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for episode 2 where we try to drive the little red car for the very first time. What will happen next? Find out next time on Dr. Fixit's 1977 MGB Restoration, Episode 2. Alrighty, we got that on camera too, baby.